Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi, everybody. Okay, here's the deal. This particular episode is going to be a little different than maybe some others because I basically have one topic to discuss in this episode, and it may not be very long, but there are a number of old stories that I need to bring up, and certainly some current events and a number of other issues here, but it all pertains to the last school board meeting in the town where I live and what actually took place during this board meeting. Now, some days have passed, of course, since the meeting took place last Thursday, and I've calmed myself down and learned a great deal more about what is going on in the district. But I'm glad that I've calmed myself down because when I was watching this board meeting live, I was absolutely furious. This was hands down of all of the board meetings that I've watched and listened to over the years, which is upwards of at least over 100 plus. I can safely say that this one was certainly the worst, or one of the worst, and at the same time, which I'll bring up why that's the case, this is what I would call one of the more watershed moments for this school district in a very good way. And I mean that specifically for people like us, and certainly this listening audience, who don't want the school system to continue to exist the way that it does, with all of the lies and the constant collaboration. I hate that word, but there you have it. It's all of those things. And I'm trying to gather my thoughts here as best I can, because what I'm going to do in this episode is I'm going to run through the board meeting and give everybody a taste of what actually went on step by step in this board meeting. Now, if you're turning this off already and you're saying that sounds boring, I fully understand. However, here's where this matters. You don't have to live where I live for this to matter to you. This should matter to everybody regardless of where you live, because the school districts around where you are haven't learned a single thing in the last 4 years. They haven't learned anything. And this board meeting proves it, because what they're actually doing is they're doubling down. So allow me to sort of summarize the whole board meeting basically at the top here, and then I'll get into the specifics. Okay, this is the Talawanda City School District in Oxford, Ohio. They're hands down the worst and have been for a very long time. Certainly from an academic standpoint, of course, the lies they teach in the curriculum, people don't know that they're lies. I've been over that a million times with every school. It's remarkably unfortunate, but as you might expect, they purposefully hire individuals in administrative positions who only play ball with the worst individuals who already work there. And if you don't play ball, well, then people go after you, basically, and they edge you out, and they do all of the things that they do in endless working environments to get rid of you. This particular board meeting, however, really had some major moments in it that have kicked a ball down a hill that they're not going to be able to get back. First of all, just as a quick summary, you may recall that this is the same school district that is under a federal lawsuit and federal indictment, so to speak, for their handling of a assault that took place on a child, on a middle school minor, at the hands of one of their middle school business teachers, a male. And this individual had apparently done this before. Instead of firing this individual after Title IX investigations, they allowed it to go through and they allowed him to resign, even though the board, the administration, and everybody was found basically guilty of not doing what they should have been doing this entire time, in particular cutting him loose. They simply let this teacher resign, and then of course he lost his he wasn't an administrator. He lost his teaching license through the state of Ohio. So of course you Google this guy. His name is Paul Stiver. If you look him up, you'll basically find all of the news stories about him, which basically, again, means that he'll be waiting tables for the rest of his life, and that's the end of it. He's not going to be a school teacher, certainly not a certified one in any capacity whatsoever. Even so, he should be in jail. because it was the local prosecutor who failed to prosecute him. Now, I'm not sure why, but either way, there is a federal lawsuit that is continuing to move forward here, and that's something I'm going to continue to keep my eyes on. So that's the school district we're talking about. Again, we're also talking about a school district that wants another levy on the ballot. The last one didn't pass. The last one failed by 3,000 votes. They're not going to get another levy. They want administrative pay to be increased for all administrators. They're not making many cuts whatsoever. There's a busing problem where they're not even running the buses properly. And I believe, whatever it is, high school students don't get buses. I believe that's the current state of affairs now. And it's complete and utter chaos. So the board members, by and large, don't know what they're doing. There is one board member who knows what they're doing and is a patriot. There is no doubt about that. And the the superintendent rather, and the treasurer are in each other's pockets and attached at the hip. Again, we're talking about a level of corruption here that is blinding. But I want to run again through this board meeting and lay it out for everybody as to what exactly happened. So, again, let me summarize it very quickly. The first half of the board meeting was all of the puff presentations that take place where they basically pat themselves on the back and then they invite in outside organizations that all collaborate, quote unquote, with this school district, and school districts, of course, like it. And they basically, again, talk about how great their organization is, the partnership that they have with the school district, and blah, 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 blah. This goes on for well over an hour. I would say close to almost 2 hours. And then there are there's a superintendent presentation on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that shows up next, which is equally as awful. Then a fire alarm gets pulled right in the middle of one of the board members speaking about this particular presentation that's taking place regarding discipline. So a fire alarm gets pulled, or it just randomly goes off, or whatever, a malfunction, whatever it may be. So they adjourn momentarily, and then minutes pass, probably 30 minutes or so, and then they come back. And then they continue with their presentation. And then that's the end of the administration presentations and outside group presentations portion of the meeting. And then the public comments section. And there were 3 individuals who came up to the microphone to give a quick talk and a quick presentation. One of them, the first one, was an individual who ran for school board, and he lost. I voted for him because he basically, again, is interested in tracking the money. Where's all the money going? What are you doing with all of the money? Not to mention busing. That was a big issue of his, too, that we have to bring back busing. This has to be something that occurs. So he's basically been all over that issue specifically, but he administered a survey to the public to basically counter the district's survey and what the district themselves was doing with the satisfaction survey. So the district, again, put out a survey to the citizens and basically said, tell us what you think about busing. Tell us what you think about the current schedule and the start time of schools and blah, blah, blah. It's all a manipulative game. These people are being, again, yanked around left and right. They're being lied to, and then they're being, gaslit, and then they make one move and then they make the next. It's very confusing, but it's just constant manipulation. And again, this individual by the name of Ivan Carver, he's the guy who ran for school board and lost. He put out this survey, and basically the survey came back completely different than the results of what the district survey basically told. Now, I don't really care who it is that answered the survey. What I do know is that whatever the survey was, and of course I haven't seen it, but either way, one of his concerns was making sure that the word usage and the verbiage in the survey was not confusing, that it was easy for people to understand. Apparently he did that. And again, the results came back more positive for a positive result as opposed to the current state of affairs now. So you have to keep in mind, too, that you constantly have teachers' unions and teachers and all of this division that exists, in particular when it comes to fighting parents and parents fighting administrators and fighting the board, and then the board trying to satisfy everyone's needs, which is, of course, what they attempt to do, but you can't do that in this business. It's impossible. And that's the way that it goes with every American school. So that was his presentation. And I'll play all of this so that you can hear all of it. But the next individual who comes up is the husband of the board member who is the newly elected board member who sits on the board now, who I actually went to high school with myself. And she's a patriot, and she's knowledgeable about what's going on and asking very serious questions, and I've brought her up before, but her husband came up to the microphone and started to call for everybody's resignation and started to lean into everybody, and I'll play him too. And he's starting to call these people out on very, very serious things that they've done, and he's doing it publicly. And then, this was excellent as well, at the end of him speaking, he openly stated that he's going to come back next month at the next board meeting, which is in like 2.5 weeks. And he's going to lay out emails that he's in possession of where individuals were lying about him and his wife, who is a board member, and a number of other things. I know it sounds very gossipy, but it's actually worse than just gossip. Okay, gossip itself is really something that I'm not very interested in. I'm more interested in who's breaking the law. Who is engaging in infractions that can be used against their license to take their license away? These are the kinds of things that interest me. And this guy's got it. And a lot of people know about this. With that said, he again openly states at the end, and he says, I'm going to come back at the next board meeting, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say that about this person and that person. I mean, it's going to get really good. And that's putting it mildly. On top of that, then, the last person who showed up is a regular staple at these meetings, and he's the one who always goes after the finances, and he also called for everybody's resignation. During all of this, just to make this public, the superintendent himself is already looking for another position, and he's being turned down by almost every place that he's applying to. And that's because he's wrapped up in a federal lawsuit. And that's a big deal. You look this guy's name up now, endless articles pop up about this dude being dirty. And he's been dirty for a very long time, remarkably unethical, horrible human being. And they all are, because birds of a feather flock together, and, dog shit attracts flies. That's the way that it works. So, with that said, at the very end of the meeting, once the public comments are over and it was just those three, then they get into the regular board business and passing votes and, voting on this, that, and the other. When they're done with that, the board president, who is jabbed to the bone and wearing a mask and coughing through the mask the entire time, she says, okay, is there any other business that the board would like to discuss? And Dawn King, the Patriot board member, she openly says, I would like to make a motion for the immediate removal of the contract of the superintendent and his resignation due to insubordination. And then there's silence. And because no one makes a second, then the issue falls flat. And that's the end of the meeting, and then they adjourn, and the meeting ends. But she flat out called for his resignation as a board member. When this happens, it's a very big deal. It's a big deal because that's on the record now. That's in their meeting notes. It's on YouTube. And of course, articles have already been written about this and are being widely published everywhere. And this is a big deal. So people should always ask themselves, when a board member is openly stating that they're calling for the resignation of a superintendent due to specifically insubordination, one has to ask themselves why. Because this is probably an individual who knows a great deal about what's going on and other things that are going on that the public does not know. So the superintendent's finished. Now he can do a couple of things. He can jump off a bridge, He can resign. He can try to find another job. Good luck with that. But he's done. His days of being an administrator are finished. And this right here is something that is happening now across the entire United States, and it's all because of the COVID lie. Yes, they're bad people. Yes, the entire business attracts bad people. We know this. I'm not saying he's a good person. He is not. He is the worst. Flamboyantly gay. He's just a terrible person. With that part of it aside, this is what happens when the business attracts the brainwashed and the degenerate, is they'll fall for anything. And that's what happened throughout the entire COVID lie. Endless people fell for it. And they all took it, hook, line, and sinker. You can't manage something you can't understand. And a lie that complex, even though for us it's not complex, there is no COVID, never existed. Again, 5G towers and previous shots that people took. That's what made them sick. That's what's making them dead. It's that simple. But managing their way out of this entire COVID lie is impossible for these school districts. They're bankrupt. I saw a story the other day. San Francisco schools are closing. Numerous schools are closing because they have no money. They can't even turn the lights on anymore. So this was happening with small schools first. It's happening with bigger school districts now, like the one in Westerville, Ohio, which I've brought up previously. Same thing. They're going to be $10 million in debt and attempt to pass a levy for $4.1 million, which means they're still going to be $5.9 million in debt. This is the state of affairs. So that's the meeting in a nutshell. Now let me dive into it from the very top, because this comes all the way back around to the very beginning. The entire COVID lie was bought and sold to people because of all of these school districts' collaborations with endless three-letter agencies and outside organizations and government NGOs or just NGOs and other groups. That's also why they took all of the COVID stuff hook, line, and sinker. Because it was during that time when they were inviting in hospital directors and pediatricians and other doctors and so on and so on and so on. And they haven't learned, I should say this because this is important, they haven't learned a single thing. There's been no remorse. There's been no recognition of any wrongdoing. There's been no apologies. There's been nothing. You still have a board member, for God's sakes, wearing a mask. That right there should tell you something. So let me begin with the very first thing that they mentioned and that they brought up. And then I want to mention these organizations because I bet you have organizations like this around where you live too. Same kind of stuff. The first organization is called AFS International Program. AFS.us.org, if I'm not mistaken. This is the foreign exchange student program that exists nationally. And as it turns out, at least according to this particular organization, Talawanda is in the top 75 in the nation for students who are foreign exchange students or engaging in this particular program. So it says, based on their own chapter of this organization, they're entering their 60th year. They've been doing it since 1964. They've hosted 141 students from 44 countries, and they've sent 102 students to 38 countries. So yeah, the website is afsusa.org. This is a globalist organization. That's what foreign exchange students and that whole thing have always been. If you get on their website, it's all about globalism. The whole thing. It says something on their opening websites, something like Students Without Borders or Learning Without Borders. So again, if you were to ask them about illegals pouring into our country, we can take a pretty good guess as to how they would feel about that particular issue. You know, we shouldn't have borders at all, and all of this is important. So that was the first presentation. The next presentation that took place was from the Student Services Department. And this was equally as depressing and completely ridiculous. This had a lot to do with special education services. It had a lot to do with how many students have IEPs and 504s and all of this other stuff. Again, you've heard me bring up that particular subject before too, that they're always looking to get more students in these schools on special ed paperwork, because if that's the case, then they get more money. The problem, of course, is that you have to hire more special education teachers in order to teach those students, even though there's nothing special education about them. They're just a student, and maybe they just don't do very well in school. Maybe they hate school. Maybe they know that the subject is a lie. Maybe they're bored out of their skull. It could be a million reasons. But remember, once they're on that paperwork, the very next suggestion is, well, maybe we need to get them on drugs. And then they start throwing drugs down their throat. None of this is good. But schools that are in financial dire straits are doing whatever they can to increase those numbers. I wouldn't put it past this school district to do the exact same. Again, this is written basically, this goes all the way back to the Tavistock Institute and those nitwits sitting around a board table trying to scheme and meddle how it is that they can get the education system to do everything that they want and become worse than they already are. And this is part of it. This is part of that scheme. The next presentation that was given was their annual health and wellness update. This was given by their wellness coordinator. Their wellness coordinator again recently received a $30,000 donation. I don't know if that's for their salary. I don't know exactly where that money is intended to go, but this individual, as you might expect, is as brainwashed gets. This is not a literate person. This is not a thinking person. This is not an investigator. This is not someone who engages in quantitative or qualitative reasoning and analysis. They are incapable of all of that. This is a person who can put together a PowerPoint presentation and basically get on the CDC's website and regurgitate statistics from the CDC. That's essentially it. So one of the other things too, which from a nationwide and worldwide standpoint that has to be taken into consideration here, is that because of the entire COVID lie, the other grift for the American K-12 school system, and certainly university setting also, has to do with the influx of quote-unquote mental health professionals within all of these settings and all of these workplaces. Little do they know, of course, that they are a mental institution. And as a result of the brainwashing and the torture that they put everybody through, and that they themselves were the victim of when they were children, so the cycle of abuse here and the cycle of brainwashing repeats, it was a purposeful plan to implement the COVID lie in order to usher in more mental health services, i.e., hospital conglomerates and partnerships with school districts, so that you quite literally have hospitals and school districts attached to the hip, working side by side all of the time, no matter what. This is not good, because look what it's done over the last 4 years. You heard me mention a while back that you should keep an eye out for the number of urgent care facilities and hospital conglomerates, if not straight up doctor's offices, that pop up on the property of American K-12 schools or very close to said property. It's certainly the case in this town. There is an urgent care facility. I forget the exact name. I'm going to get it wrong, so I'm not even going to say it. But whatever the name of this urgent care place is, or this small little hospital/doctor's office, it is quite literally in front of our high school. It's basically on the same piece of property. The grass touches each other. So you drive on this road, and then to your left is this small little urgent care hospital. You keep driving down that driveway, and then you're in the parking lot of the high school. Again, they're practically on top of each other. This is not a good thing. That means that there will be more government control over these schools and school districts, more so than there already is, because they already are government. But when you have all of these quote-unquote collaborations and all of these partnerships, in particular with three-letter agencies. Ladies and gentlemen, no one working inside of a school building, let alone a school board of separate elected officials, is going to operate independently as a board. And as we saw in the last 4 years, they didn't act independently, did they? They all did what their TV told them. They all did what their health departments told them. They all did the exact same thing that the three-letter agencies told them, which I've been over it here on the show. HHS, FEMA, the FDA, the FCC, and the National Security Council all ran point on the COVID lie. They all ran point on it. They followed this thing step by step like it was a war of some kind. And our enemy is this invisible thing that doesn't exist. That's it. So they're not going to think, which means, what do you think a wellness coordinator who works for the district under a salary, allegedly, or a donation, is going to be doing? Is this a person and a personality of an individual who's going to think independently and actually search for the truth and then deliver said truth to a school district in a board meeting? Of course not. This is a lackey. Excuse me. This is exactly the kind of person that the Tavistock Institute and institutes like it, the World Economic Forum, the UN, the World Health Organization, this is exactly the kind of person that they want. They want someone who just does everything that they're asked to do and told to do. So this wellness coordinator receives emails and then regurgitates said information back into a PowerPoint presentation and then presents it to the school district to make it look like everything is hunky-dory, when clearly it is furthest from. They've actually advocated for their own death. They've advocated for their own destruction and their own loss of employment, and they don't even know it. So here was their first slide. It says, provide support for kinship caregivers. It says they hosted 4 sessions this past school year. They shared opportunities widely and made personal invites. They had key learnings. God knows what that means. Academic and curricular questions, connecting with resources. Time to connect is appreciated and desired. And then they said what they're going to do apparently for the next school year, which is consistent schedule, alternate times and days, balance of social time versus informational time, and minimize barriers, i.e. childcare and transportation. Then they showed this wheel, which is all of their support for students, having to do with cessation resources and Second Chance, which is an online learning platform regarding nicotine, apparently. A screening brief intervention or referral to treatment. This is apparently for students who have a drug problem. Parent, caregiver, and student meeting with wellness coordinator, which is her, which means, again, what kind of advice are you really going to be getting? And then a Talawanda teen group with Dr. Rich Hall. God knows what that means. I'm sure it's a nightmare. Then they go over drug information, nicotine information, how many people participate, blah, blah, blah. They share more data. Let's see. 30-day use regarding alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, prescription drugs, and electronic vapors. They say that in Talawanda, 8% in the last 30 days, 8% of their students admitted to using alcohol. Now, again, I've been over the whole wellness survey nonsense before. What student in a middle school and or high school is going to admit to using alcohol on a survey? What student and how many students are going to admit to marijuana use? Because here it says 4.9% use marijuana. And if this is true, that 8% use alcohol, that's a lot, isn't it? It certainly seems like it's far worse than that, too. I don't believe these numbers in the slightest, because, as I just said, I administered such a survey when I taught school that were initially dished out essentially by the CDC themselves. I thought the survey was ridiculous because it was asking the wrong questions, and they were remarkably invasive, too. And I've been over that survey before on the show a long time ago, but They're not good, nor are they honest nor valid. But they honestly believe them at face value, and then they publish those statistics. And then, of course, like in this case, they bring it back to a school board, and the school board goes, well, that sounds pretty good. I mean, we've got some work to do, but, let's pat ourselves on the back on that one. It's not good. Then they show this chart from dating back into the early 2000s all the way through 2020, and it shows alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, prescription drug, and vaping use all declining. Okay. Again, it begs the question, who's openly admitting to using it in the first place? I'm not saying that, students are maybe drinking alcohol today the way that they did back then, or even using drugs today the way that they did back then. Maybe they're not. But even so, it's an invalid survey because look who they're asking. It goes on, and they get into the business of social and emotional learning. And it's beyond ridiculous. Again, they think that these things work. They think that these things help people, and they don't. They, of course, continue to partner with the United Way, which is also ridiculous, and that was essentially the end of her presentation. And I'm summarizing her for the sake of brevity, but that was basically it. Here was the next presentation, and this one is disturbing. In fact, there's a piece of audio I want to play with this in just a minute, which will show you and prove to you that they have learned nothing. That these individuals live in the matrix and they know not what they do. And again, you have to hire people like this in order to carry out an evil agenda. You have to hire the unknowledgeable. You have to hire the people who just want to agree all of the time and make it sound like they know what they're talking about when in fact they don't. This presentation was given by a local group called the Hope Cooperative, and their website is thehopecoop.com. And I bounced over to their website, and I wanted to read their About section for you here because this is, again, a local organization, but there's no such thing as a local organization when you're collaborating with endless people, in particular government, which means it's really just basically a staging ground for morons to carry out a government agenda on unwitting people who just, stand in line for the meat grinder, basically. So this is Oxford Hope, is what it's called. Again, Hope Cooperative. About the Hope Cooperative, it says, there's hope. The state of Ohio has been on the forefront for the addiction crisis since the opioid epidemic came to light in the early 2000s. Well, opioids have been around longer than that. Anyway, it says in 2007, unintentional drug poisoning became the leading cause of injury death in the state, surpassing motor vehicle crashes for the first time on record. This trend continued, and in 2018, 3,764 people died of unintentional drug overdose across Ohio. In southwest Ohio, Butler County is comprised of 470 square miles and is home to more than 382,000 people. Butler County accounts for only 1% of the total area of Ohio and 3% of the total population. However, Butler County's 176 unintentional drug overdose deaths accounted for 5% of the state's overall total in 2018. It says additionally, Butler County ranked third in the state for the number of age-adjusted rate of unintentional drug overdose deaths by county for the period of 2013 through 2018. This rate is a jump from the previous age-adjusted death rate of 26.5 for the period of 2009 through 2014. It says previously ranked Butler County as 7th in the state. So it's jumped from 26.5 to 53.3. It says Oxford Township is an HRSA designated rural area located within Butler County and contained within the 45056 area code. Within Oxford Township, there's an approximate population of 22,371 individuals. Oxford Township comprises approximately 5.59% of the population of Butler County. However, due to its rural nature, this area faces unique challenges in the prevention, treatment, and recovery efforts within the community. HRSA awarded implementation grants to strengthen and expand substance use disorder, or SUD, including opioid use disorder, OUD prevention. So now it's all a disorder. Did you catch that name? Strange. Treatment and recovery services in rural areas to be carried out by consortium members within the existing community. And here we go, and this is the worst part. This actually, before I get to the board member shenanigans here in a moment also, this right here, ladies and gentlemen, is the biggest part of this particular episode. This is the part where I was snapping pens in my hand as I was watching this for the first time. This is the stone cold proof that they haven't learned a thing, and they're listening to outside agencies all of the time. It says the consortium members are McCallahide Memorial Hospital, which is our local hospital. Killam and Hydem is what we like to call it. Tri-Health, which is the tri-state or tri-county health conglomerate that basically runs every health thing you see. It says the Talawanda School District, the K-12 school district, of course, Miami University, the Butler County Mental Health and Addiction Recovery Services Board, the Coalition for a Healthy Community, Oxford Area and Epiphany Community Services. Those are all the local people that they all work with. Now, there's nothing local about them. These are state-run, federally funded, state-funded, if not foreign-funded, Miami University, foreign-funded organizations. If you drop the COVID lie on top of any one of those organizations, they will all do the same thing again, because they've all done the same thing the last 4 years, in lockstep with one another. At the very bottom of this About page, it says the following in small print. It says, this initiative was supported by the Health Resources and Services Administration, or HRSA, of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, as a part of a financial assistance award totaling $2 million, with 100% funded by HRSA and HHS. The contents of those of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official views of nor or endorsement by HRSA, HHS, or the U.S. government. For more information, please visit acknowledge, blah, 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 blah. Okay. 3-letter agencies, government, local organizations being funded, bought, coerced into going along with and agreeing with those 3-letter agencies and government, and then in the lap of all of those decisions, you have a child in a classroom, downstream from that giant shit-filled river, from government and all of the decisions that get made. That's what all of this is here. This is the worst. It's the worst thing that can actually happen to any of these environments, and it's happening consistently. They, of course, threw up a giant cooperative members slide on their PowerPoint presentation to show all of those organizations that I just mentioned and how they all work together. And we're all in this together, and we're all in this together, and blah, 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 blah. They brag about social emotional learning, harm reduction and prevention, and then hospital-based peer support. This is where it gets real jacked up, and I have some audio to play because I want you to hear it yourself. This continues to prove these people are not awake in the slightest. Not to mention, listen to the tone of her voice. Does this sound like an individual that you would want to follow anywhere? Does this sound like an individual who is knowledgeable? I don't think so. I wouldn't follow this person down the street to get the mail out of my mailbox. But give this woman a listen, and specifically what she says regarding this particular child in 3, 2, 1.
A few highlights. Again, social emotional learning. We've hit on that a couple times here. Curriculum, assessment tools, mindfulness training. We have over 100 staff members trained in Calm Classroom now. We are teaching our students how to self-regulate and de-stress. And one of my favorite stories is that a pediatrician told me that they had a student come a patient come for a vaccination, and they were nervous, and they said, wait, I got to do my calm classroom before their vaccination. It's not just a school thing, it's becoming a life thing, and that's what we want. Harm reduction and prevention. We have great partnerships with individuals and agencies that have the expertise and the skill sets to meet people where they're at on their journey through substance use to treatment and recovery, defining recovery as whatever the individual defines it as. And I'm so proud of that we have these sites and these tools now to assist our families and the residents of our community. And then wonderful peer support specialists at McCullough Hyde that can meet them at that point when they're coming in crisis and walk the walk. They are individuals with lived experience in substance use and mental health, and they're there to be that person that really gets it very authentically, to walk with them.
Almost speechless. They had the kid, or the kid on his own, say a mantra that he's taught in school, in a classroom setting, before he receives a quote-unquote vaccination at a pediatrician's office because he was nervous about getting it, so he had to calm himself before he got jabbed. If that pediatrician is the same pediatrician who spoke before me at that school board meeting 3 years ago, who lives down the street from me, that pediatrician himself now has a heart condition, his wife has breast cancer, and his daughter-in-law has ALS. What's all that from, do you think? These people are killing one another. They're killing each other daily, and they don't even know it. They don't even know that they're advocating for the murder of their fellow citizens, and this still is happening. It makes my chest hurt, and not in the myocarditis kind of way. It just does. These people have no flippin' idea what they're doing. Again, listen to the tone of her voice. Does she sound like a person who's awake? Or does she sound like a person who's walking on a mental tightrope with somebody dangling her over the edge? She actually claimed during their so-called, whatever it is, drug intervention counseling, what have you, harm reduction and prevention. You heard her say it. We work with the drug user because that person's problem is whatever they think it is. It's completely up to the drug user to decide what their problem is. And then we work with them to make sure that they find a way that is most comfortable for them. That's not how drug reduction works. That's not how drug prevention works, or drug counseling, or getting someone clean. That's not how it works. Because around here, the way that it works for them anyway, is they dish out endless cans and doses of naloxone, or Narcan, as it's called. It's naloxone. And they give it to them because they're junkies and they're heroin users. So they get clean needles from these people via a grant from HHS. And then they give it out to drug users who continue to use drugs. The naloxone causes their high to go away, only to then use more drugs with their clean needles that they receive from these people themselves. You have to be a certain kind of retarded in order to believe that that's going to solve a problem. Hell, HHS is involved in bringing illegal drugs into our country. Why would they be the solution to anything? These people are being used in all of these organizations as pawns for government. But they're, again, they're in school. They're in school. They are in the pants of school. They're right there. There's no avoiding them. I'm sorry. Now I'm getting amped up. See what happens? You see what happens? I'm going to take a breath here. This is the issue. This is why you have to remove your children and anybody that you can think of out of these environments permanently. It is a brainwashing camp with one goal in mind: killing them. That's it. And they're killing them with just straight up stupidity. Again, I could keep playing audio from her presentation alone, and it's beyond terrible, because there were 3 people who were presenting with this particular thing, and again, all of them were clearly lackeys. I mean, you don't even see their faces. You just see the PowerPoint presentation on the YouTube screen that they're showing you. And you can just hear their voices, and you just know what a lackey sounds like. You know what these people sound like. They all have the same tone. They all have the exact same cadence in their voice. They don't sound not only awake, but they almost don't even sound like they're human beings. They sound like they are something else. It is bizarre. I don't understand these people and their personality. It is awful. They're the worst. Let's see here. Again, this is so cheesy. They put up this slide, with some stupid table and flyers, and come to our table and pick up some flyers and blah blah blah. Meet one of our other lackeys. It's just so sad. These people have no lives. They just have 0 lives, and they actually think they're helping, and they're clearly not. Here's another little trick of all of this that I think is beyond alarming. The aspect of all of this that was certainly coordinated and without a doubt planned, hence all the money moving around and changing hands and being laundered and a million other things, is that the COVID lie and the implementation of those bioweapon shots has caused all of these so-called health organizations to pop out of the cracks. It's also caused all of them to have to respond to endless individuals wherever they are, wherever they live, because if you're suffering from those bioweapon shots, you can't travel. You're not getting in your car with Guillain-Barré syndrome and heading to the hospital. It's not working that way. So what are they doing with all of their so-called helpful efforts? What are they working toward? Well, they have endless telehealth options now, apparently. Mobilize community voices in undeserved areas. So if you live out in the rural, in a rural area and you're jabbed to the bone, you can pick up a phone and they'll send an ambulance out to your car and give you more jabs. And don't worry, because we have grant money that allows us to do that, and we'll be there to help you. Ladies and gentlemen, the ambulance in the town where I live, and there are 2 of them. There are 2 that are associated with the fire department and 1 associated with the hospital, so 3 total. They're running in this town constantly. You can hear them almost every single day. And there's a difference, as you would expect, between a fire engine and a police car and an ambulance. The sirens are not the same. These are always ambulances. And they are constant. I've even brought those statistics up on a previous show, having to do with, again, the number of calls. It's enormous. It went from like 1 call a week to at least 8. That's not good. Of course, they're not sharing that information. Why would they? It doesn't favor them. It makes no sense. They wouldn't look up that information, let alone bring it to the people. They're hiding everything. Whether they're doing it consciously or unconsciously, they're just flat out hiding the truth. Your ears don't lie. I can hear the meat wagon going around this town almost every day. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. All right. That was the end of that presentation. Now here's the next one. And I actually want to do this. I want you to hear this nitwit's voice. This is the superintendent. And he's been asked to provide, he's been asked to provide a student wellness DPIA diversity and equity and SRO information presentation. 7 minutes into this presentation, the alarm gets pulled, the fire alarm. It either goes off by accident or someone just pulls it. And then, ironically, which makes zero sense, they come back from their brief recess, and the president of the board, who is coughing profusely and wearing a mask, she openly says, "Well, it's nice to see that our fire alarm system works and is operating as it's supposed to." Well, no, it isn't, because it's not supposed to go off in the middle of a board meeting when there's no fire. You see, these people are pathological liars. They'll even lie about something so stupid and trivial as that. Well, at least the fire alarm works and it's doing exactly what it's supposed to. No, no, it isn't. It's unbelievable. Again, I got nothing. Anyway, let me play this so you can hear this nitwit's voice, and then you'll hear one of the other board members with his grovel voice. He's jabbed to the bone too, coughs all the time. And then you'll hear the fire alarm go off. And then I'll come back and I'll skip right ahead to the public comments section because you got to hear this part too. So give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Asked me last month to provide some information on diversity and equity. So that's going to be coming up. You've also heard some information already that we've just presented over the last few presentations, but we've also had building presentations, social work presentations throughout the year to provide some of those information. But the first thing I'm going to start out with is student wellness and DPIA, which is Disadvantaged Pupil Impact Aid. And you can see on the screen, we get a little over $400,000 when you combine. This is a grant that, actually it's not a grant. It is money that is provided to us by the state. In the past, the money was extra, meaning we would get our state share, and then we would get some additional money for student wellness, and then some additional money for the Disadvantaged Pupil Impact Aid. Well, it's changed a little bit. We're still getting the money, but now it's all incorporated into one, and there's still reporting requirements that we have to do. Hence why I'm going over this right now. We went over this, it was around February's board meeting in the 5-year plan. It had some information about what we were doing with the student wellness and DPIA. You will see for our student wellness funds, the $260,000, it covers almost all 4 social workers or salaries and benefits. Not quite, but almost all of them. Our DPIA, $167,000 and some change. We use that for partial salarations for our alternative school teacher, evening school teacher, 1 counselor, 1 TOL, which is teaching online staff, and a SAP teacher at the high school. Next slide, please. So we can supplant with these 2 funds that we're having. They are not grants in the sense that you can't. So that's why we're using this information to be able to share that with you. Also, I've put some links here. I'm not going to open them up due to the numerous presentations, but you can look at these links. You'll find information on these 2 funds that we're receiving from ODE or now due. And we also have a Talawanda plan. Our Talawanda plan encompasses much more than what we're paying for. So the 4 social workers and the staff that I mentioned on the last staff, our plan is much more comprehensive. We also talk about safety, other health and wellness. You're hearing some of this. We definitely do not get enough money from these 2 fundings to pay for all of it. But in our plan, we wanted people to see, in our community to see what we have. Next slide, please. So now I'm moving on to SRO information. So we, this year, have 2 full-time at the high school and middle school, 1 in each. Split SRO at Bogan and Marshall, and then a half-time at Kramer. So next school year, one of the things that were brought back was a full-time resource officer in each building. The SROs are not involved in discipline. They're not involved in making decisions. They will help administrators or teachers or staff or students when need to. So some of the data that was asked, and it's always asked every year, I know Mr. Mead does this. The Butler County Sheriff does Bogan and Marshall, the SRO. You can see some of the items that he has worked on. There were 0 student arrests and citations altogether. Next slide, please. So the Oxford PD does the other SROs. They do Kramer, the high school, and the middle school. Again, you can see some of the work that the Kramer SRO is working on, almost the same thing. 0 students were charged, arrested, or had a citation. There was 1 parent that was charged, arrested for telecom harassment. Next slide. High school and middle school, again, we said was full-time. Again, you see some of the information that they work with our staff, our administrators, our students and families. They go a little bit more deeper because we do have students that are involved with the court system, parole officers. They also go into classrooms and they provide educations like on First Amendment rights. So they go in and do more of that. And all of them work on traffic. At the middle school. At the middle school, 8 student charges resulted this past year, including 1 that was a bus. And the bus one was completed by the Kramer SRO because it was on the way from the middle school. In that, 6 of the students were male, 2 were female. 6 were Caucasian, 1 was 0 parents were charged or arrested. The high school data, 6 student charges, 4 were male, 2 were female, 4 Caucasian, 1 black, and 1 unknown. It was for the ethnicity. And we did have 1 parent charge arrested. Next slide.
Can we, I think the next slide's going to a different area and this one ends the SRO.
Yep.
So can we pause a minute?
Yep, you can ask questions.
All right.
Yep.
Are you concerned about any of that data about the SROs, arrest citations or anything?
I am not concerned
Okay.
about that. And if an SRO is involved in this, arrest needs to be made. It is something that has to be done because unsafe situation, whether it's for that student or other students or staff.
Yeah. I have some concerns. I remember when we voted to bring SROs into the school buildings, one of the concerns with SROs is the increasing criminalization of young people with their mistakes and behavior. Because when you bring an SRO in, unfortunately or fortunately, they have a job to do. I don't know about other people in the audience, but I remember getting in a few fights at school because I was a feisty person. Probably lucky there was not an SRO around, or I would have started with a criminal record as a juvenile. And I taught at Talawanda schools before there were SROs. I broke up many fights, some of them fairly violent, some of them with a lot of blood. But I don't remember many arrests. It was a school issue. And I think bringing SROs in for safety, which I am all in favor of, puts us in a position.
I love it. Okay, so sorry you had to hear all that. I just wanted to play it so that you can hear these people's voices. One of the board members, by the way, who's not there is the same guy who I filed an ethics complaint about. He decided apparently to take the day off. So he decided to not show. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more ethics violations against this guy. He's a complete loser. Anyway, the one that you heard at the end talking, and well, back in my day, I was a little feisty and I got into some fights and I would have had a criminal record if I was a kid. Well, that would have been fantastic because you never would have been a school board member, let alone a school teacher. So that should have happened. Number 2, and ironically enough, he has an adopted black son who is now apparently in jail. Interesting. Again, these people live in a glass house naked and they throw stones all of the time, acting like they're morally superior to everybody, and yet, all you have to do is go to where they live, open the door, and it's complete chaos. That's usually how it works with most of these people. On top of that, they also mentioned this. And again, you've heard me bash resource officers before. Many of them are not good. Many of them do not do what they're supposed to. I've read numerous stories on this show of resource officers having sexual relationships with students, sexual relationships with staff. Again, not doing their job, selling drugs, bringing drugs, a number of things. They let things slide all of the time. This is something that goes on. Wouldn't be surprised if it happens here too, regarding a variety of things, I'm certain. On top of that, though, later on in the board meeting, and this is well after the public comment section, which I'm going to play next, they actually put up on the screen the total numbers, so they say, which means it's not real, the total number of bullying reporting issues that were made in each school in this school district. There's 1 high school, 1 middle school, and 3 elementary schools. Here's what they claim was the bullying events report, first semester and second semester, from this past school year, the 23-24 school year. In the first semester, they make the claim that the high school only had 2 reports of bullying that were received, and 0 of those 2 qualified as a bullying event. Now raise your hand if you actually believe that. If you're raising your hand, take that hand and slap yourself across the face, because it's not true. Okay? They're lying. They lie about this stuff all of the time. It gets more embarrassing. First semester, we're still in the same semester. The middle school, there were apparently 5 reports that were received of bullying. Turned out, 0 of them qualified as a bullying event. The school district is now 2 for 2. They're batting 1,000 because all these people, all 7 of them, who made these reports for bullying, they all turned out apparently to not be true. Again, I don't believe this at all. Bogan Elementary, 2 reports received of bullying. 0 of them qualified as a bullying event. Kramer Elementary, 7 reports of bullying. 0 qualified as a bullying event. And the other elementary school received 0 reports altogether. Again, don't believe it. Second semester, this was equally as hilarious. The high school, in the second semester, only received 3 reports, and 0 of them turned out to be bullying events. And in the middle school, there were 12 reports, and 0 of them turned out to be bullying events. And there were none in any of the elementary schools in the second semester. Horseshit. This is exactly what they do to make it look like everything is fine in their building. They just hit the delete button on a keyboard. That's called fraud. It's that simple. The entire thing is fraudulent. Now, let me get to the public comments section. Their stupid presentation on SROs and whatever, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah, sorry. I have to mention this. The superintendent openly stated in the end of his presentation when they came back from recess that they are doing whatever they can to hire non-whites. He says this. This is a thing. He openly admits that they hired 2 black education assistants at the beginning of 2023, but they both left after a semester. They both quit. He claims they found another job making more money because we don't pay them enough. Don't believe that either. That's a lie also. But this entire thing having to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion, ladies and gentlemen, you know it to be true. It's anti-white. It's all about not hiring white people. And they're always frustrated because they're openly stating we're always trying to find and hire people of color. This is what he says. In fact, I'll play him right now. You can hear it yourself in 3, 2, 1.
And then we're going to continuing our hiring recommendations. It is really difficult to get people to apply for jobs out here that come from a racial background that's different than white. We're outside, we're not close to any area. We can't ask that on an application because it's illegal to do that, but we do try to seek out and get more people to come. And honestly, you know, the two individuals that I talked about, the Bogan individuals, they left for other areas for more money. I mean, is what it is, but I'm not saying that we're going to let it go, but it's difficult to find.
And that's it. It trails off there. He openly said it. We try to find people of color, i.e., if you're white, you need not apply. And you can hear the disdain in his voice when he goes, because, I mean, we can't ask them on that, you know, on an application, or we can't say that in the hiring process because it's illegal. He doesn't want it to be illegal. He wants something like that to be okay. He wants to be able to say, if you're black, apply. If you're white, don't. And on every single slide that he showed in this presentation, the only thing that he was showing were the number of blacks that he was hiring. I'm not kidding. This should be remarkably insulting to blacks everywhere. Any black American, anybody who just happens to have darker skin who's an American, this should be remarkably insulting. He's showing you on a slideshow like your, I don't know, a diamond ring that was magically found on the beach, or a pearl that was magically found inside of a clam's mouth. It's outrageous. We hired a black person. And then he gets all excited. Well, and then 2 of them left. Well, we hired another black person. Oh, well, they left after a semester. And they left because they were they were looking for more money. Now, he has no proof that that was the case. He has no proof. But he also believes that the reason that the vast majority of the black students in this school district, at least one of which is the son of one of the board members who's threatened to kill students, hello, I mean, he should be expelled. But what's funny is that it clearly shows that the vast majority of the black students are the ones that are getting in trouble. That's what these slides also showed. So he seems to think that if you hire more blacks, or you hire anybody who is not white, that somehow the students who are not white are going to behave better. Because, again, I got to tell you too, there are endless academic papers that have been written about this and published that not that they're real, because it's completely ridiculous, but if they walk around, that if black students walk around and they see black teachers, then they're not going to get in fights, that they're not going to bring drugs, that they won't be violent or engage in sexual harassment or sexual assault, because the staff members that exist in the buildings are the same race as the students themselves. And by default, that will mean that they won't engage in any conduct-breaking behavior or illegality. Well, if that's true, what's going on in inner-city environments? The vast majority of the employees are the exact same race as the people who attend. So that blows all of that out of the water. It has nothing to do with race, per se. It has everything to do with behavior and what you're taught and culture and the building as a whole, of course. I mean, the building invites violence and division and competition. What do you expect? Again, I've written books about the subject. I'm not going to waste everybody's time here, but honestly, an open admission that we're not looking to hire white people. Congratulations. Again, that's what diversity, equity, and inclusion means. It means no more white people. Now, deep breath. Here's the public comment section. I'm going to bounce in after each one of these individuals. There's only 3. But the first one is Ivan Carver. Again, he ran for school board this past November. He didn't win. I voted for him. But, he's kind of a money guy, and he knows that this place is fraudulent and the whole thing. And again, I'll make a couple of comments after he talks. The second individual who comes up is the husband of the female board member who is the new board member. She's the one asking all the questions, and again, she's tipping over rocks, and they hate it. And her husband has had enough, and he's involved in all of this too, and it's beautiful because he cuts into all of them. And then the last guy you'll hear, he calls for everybody's resignation also. And then I'll skip ahead and I'll play the end where you actually hear the female board member, the wife of the guy who speaks second here. She calls for the immediate removal of the superintendent. And then I'll round out the episode because it gets interesting. So here we go. Here's the first individual in 3, 2, 1.
Ivan Carver, Hanover Township. So this administration conducted a survey, start and end times, to address the need of the community. I did highlight this to this board administration. The answer I got was, well, it's not going to matter. We have the president's vote. So I started putting in information requests, trying to dig at what is the need of our community with busing. I kept getting hit with roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. So I got frustrated and I conducted my own survey. So here's the results. I had over 800 responses, which is pretty decent compared. I'm just a regular community member. I did not require anybody to give me identifying information. That's a little bit to my detriment, but I wanted to hear the true voice of our community. So I did ask open-ended questions that I wanted to hear responses without pressure to identify. So I had to remove almost 200 of those responses. That left me with 628 people that I could. So out of that, the true need is 230 of those responses. I did vet these responses as the crow flies, 1 mile to 2 mile limit, but as the Google Maps. I also vetted against whether they had high school students or not. So 230 families that cannot get it under a 1 year system. Another fun fact, 384 of those responses said voted for a single tier because either they didn't understand what was a 1 tier or 2 tier, or they were scared of the 7:15 a.m. So with all that being said, we voted 2-tier busing in December. You verified it again in April, and then you removed it in May. What's more vote? Now that you know the true need of the community. With that being said, also, I'd like to address the administrative raises tonight. As you remember, I sent you all an email in April. You read that thoroughly. Showed where the administration is comparing ourselves to the likes of Forest Hill, Springboro, Mason, Lakota, either very rich districts or 5 times our size. So if you truly are a new physically conservative board, then I expect a no vote tonight on those admin raises. Happy. Thank you for your time.
Again, he conducts a survey that basically shows that the school board doesn't know what the hell they're doing. Because again, all they did was make a decision based on busing and based on an early start time, based on what teachers wanted, not what children wanted and not what parents wanted, regarding, again, having busing for everybody. But the entire thing is very ticky-tack as far as I'm concerned because it's complete manipulation regarding the entire situation. They could have whatever start time they wanted if they really wanted it. They could have whatever buses they really wanted if they wanted it, but they're too busy hiring people that they don't need to hire for things that they don't need for positions that never used to exist. So to consistently say, well, you don't have the money, you don't have the money. Well, you're right. You don't have the money because you've misspent all of it. And you continue to misspend all of it. I mean, earlier in the board meeting, they even made a motion to continue to work with, you can't even make this up, continue to work with a lawyer organization as a school district, along with endless other Ohio school districts, to hire lawyers to go after the state of Ohio's state representatives and the law that already is on the books that gives more voucher money to parents to seek out private schooling and Christian schooling for their children. And they all approved that. All of them did. They all voted for it. So they're paying a fee, a lawyer fee, as a school district for a separate group of lawyers to go after a political issue. I mean, it's absurd. But this is the wasteful spending. I don't care if it's $500. I don't care what it is. It doesn't matter even the amount of money. This is just what they do. This is the amount of wasteful spending that they engage in, and the time wasting. It's incredible. Okay, next speaker. This is Scott King. It sounds like they call him Sky King at the beginning, which is kind of funny. R.I.P. Sky King. But either way, this is Scott King. This is the husband of the female board member Dawn King, and he cuts into him, and the man's got the receipts. So give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Sky King is next.
Thank you. Scotty King, Dartown, Ohio. I've been silent too long. Since my son's graduated, it's time for me to speak. Blatant collusion, politicking between Ed, Dave, and Pat is apparent, and based off the phone records and on-stage performance, you continually accuse my wife, and I of this, but obviously this comes from a place of your guilty conscience. Becky, you accuse my wife of violating executive session, and that is false. That is slander, and I did expect a little bit more from you. As requested from the board president, I have not put any public request in several weeks. Do I have permission now to put request in? Ed, your incompetence. It's amazing. It was on full display when you told Shauna to send me the last 4 years of the district ledgers, and she did so completely unredacted. I was sent every child's name, disability, IEP, address, contact information, and much, much more personal information that I should not have. This is a FERPA violation, and the rights of the students in our district because of Ed and your ego. It's much too large, and you make decisions based on emotions, and that's what's best for Talawanda. Someone with this level of responsibility, you should be able to handle pressure and not violate the rights of Talawanda students from the years of 2019 to 2022 in order to prove something or to win an argument. Your office also sent the Vote Yes group the full student directory, and I believe this is also a FERPA violation. Again, Talawanda deserves better. Now, this is a good one. For anyone of us who has Facebook, which apparently a lot of us do, who remembers John Dameron? Which that's D-A-M-R-O-N. He was the troll who tore apart people, was against the school levy, tried to discredit Mindy and Nicole when they ran for school board. This person was nasty, hateful, and would do anything to destroy anyone who opposed the board members he sided with or didn't support the levy. Well, based on the IP address, the location of John Dameron's profile, I believe this is Ed. I don't appreciate you hiding behind a fake profile to do your dirty work. It's not appropriate for the superintendent to handle himself this way. I'm also disgusted with the incompetence Ed, as he's displayed as our superintendent. For this being the first superintendent job, he is constantly on defense for his lack of experience and his inability to lead our district. He is currently applied for other positions, denied by both Ross and Princeton, none of them wanting. I have the list if you'd like to see it. I've requested the public information, open requests from both. And so I have this list where he's applied.
You've got about 10 seconds left, Scott.
Okay, so this is part one of me speaking at the board. I have much more to say, and I will, and the district needs to hear it. Next month, I will focus on FERPA, school safety, and David's emails. Thank you.
Huge booms. All right, here we go. Let me go through this step by step. First of all, he openly states that the board president, Rebecca Howard, who's jabbed to the bone and wearing a mask and coughing through it, accused him, or Dawn rather, his wife, who sits on the board, as violating the executive session orders, which again, you're not allowed to discuss what goes on in executive session. If that's the case, and if that's true, then you would probably have to get rid of almost every single board member in the history of forever, in particular if they're married. Because people sleep in the same bed, they live under the same roof. Now, yes, if certain things are said in executive session that border on illegality and lawyers are involved in XYZ, then sure, that doesn't necessarily have to get shared. But it's such a ticky-tack threat and such a ridiculous threat that it holds absolutely no water, no weight. That was the first thing. The second thing, he was able to find out that the superintendent himself created an anonymous account on a Facebook group and was purposefully in that group, as an anonymous person, bashing individuals who were against the last levy a number of years ago that failed by 3,000 votes. He was in there making fun of anybody who basically disagreed with him or making fun of anybody who disagreed with anything that was going on in the school district. Think about that. I can't help but remember, it was the first thing I thought of when I heard that. I thought to myself, that's like Mitt Romney when he had the Pierre Delecto fake account and was making fun of Trump on Twitter. And they found out that, his fake online handle as Mitt Romney was really Pierre Delecto. It's beyond ridiculous. I love this stuff. I love it. I mean, yes, it's gossipy, but it's worse than that. It's worse than gossip. These are the behaviors of these people. They do this innately. I mean, they were made this way or created this way probably over the course of time, certainly, but either way, this is who they are. They're devious by nature. So what makes anybody believe they're going to be honest with anything? They won't. They're incapable of honesty. The next thing he mentioned now is massive and incredibly illegal. When you make a FOIA request, the treasurer is always the one in a school district who receives that email. Those are the people that you email to gain information. He was apparently, based on what we're hearing here, he was FOIAing some document. And whatever document was sent to him was filled with students' names, addresses, money, you name it. Their I guess, special education stuff, information, pickup times, whatever. Whatever information was on there is information that no citizen is supposed to have, because it's all supposed to be redacted. The only things that exist usually in any kind of a FOIA money-related document that gets sent to someone is it'll show a particular activity and then the amount of money. But any names, addresses, locations, anything along those lines are not supposed to be there for rather obvious reasons. Say that document made its way to the internet or the black market and child traffickers picked it up. They would know students' names, where they go to receive counseling, what time they go, how much money they spend, where they live, a phone number. Then you're in deep shit. But the treasurer just violated the rules of her own license. So I bet she's gone real quick because she can't stick around much longer. Not after doing that. That's a huge, huge no-no. And you can't pass that off to some aide and say, well, it was just an aide and they were the ones that were supposed to do it, but they didn't. Everything falls on the shoulders of the treasurer in a moment like that. With a task like that, that's their job. That's why they get paid. It's the thing they're supposed to do, among other things. But if the superintendent was the one who told her to send the document to Scott, and she just did, well, that's not good either, for either one of them. Again, the anonymous online bashing of citizens or teachers and or students within a Facebook group from the superintendent violates his codes of conduct. It's conduct unbecoming an educator. He should lose his license for that, or at the very least, be reprimanded and suspended. Now, I can fill out that complaint, and I might. I have a feeling other people are, which means, again, you can't be a superintendent if you don't have a license. Now, I don't suggest these people kill themselves. They shouldn't do that. I'm not advocating for that. But before they go off and wait tables for the rest of their lives, I recommend they just quit. That would be a whole lot better. And you've got one more board meeting to do it, because the last thing he said is that he's going to come back, Scott is, he's going to come back in the next board meeting in 2.5 weeks, and he's going to read emails between a board member and other employees about, I don't know what. We're going to find out. I bet it's real interesting, whatever it is. Has to be. This is how it gets done, ladies and gentlemen. This is how it gets done. This is how you tear these people apart. And it's not personal, it's business. Because if they get to run their business the way that they get to run it, being as dishonest as they are, imagine what honesty does. This is what honesty does. This is what honesty gets you. And when you're a criminal organization consistently covering for each other's immoral and dishonest behavior, the chickens always come home to roost. And they are loud right now. And they're not going to quit. Here's the last speaker. He's usually a staple in these meetings. He usually goes after them regarding finances, but he calls for all of their resignations. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, Mike Dittman, Hanover Township. I see that the salary structure for administrators is on the agenda tonight. It appears that Talawanda's leadership team continues to deny the obvious. Talawanda spends more per pupil than any similar district in this county. Your plan is to further increase the cost, which doesn't make sense to me. We've also seen Fairfield in-state busing increase in the property tax. They're supporting the children and the families who need the busing, not increasing salaries and benefits. Highest paid employees, Talawanda is. Taxpayers must adjust their budgets to be able to pay the higher property taxes. And for me, property taxes only went up 50%. Fortunately, I can afford to pay it. Some people really can't. It stretches them hard. And with the higher property taxes, Talawanda reinstated all the planned cuts. Now, just add more costs to salaries and benefits. Makes sense, people. It's time for the board to focus on controlling spending, not increasing salaries and benefits. Question I've got for all of you. Paying the same people more money gets you better performance. Doubt it. A lot of studies on salaries that aren't a great motivator, however they think it is. As far as I'm concerned, if you vote to increase cost, salaries and benefits, you all should just resign now. Thank you.
Here's the other best part about what you just heard with those 3 comments and all of the crap that I played for you and described in the majority of their entire board meeting toward the beginning of this episode. What those 3 individuals just said, almost every single sentence of what each of them said, delegitimizes any presentation that was given beforehand. Any of those presentations that were given on diversity, equity, and inclusion, health and wellness, we talked a kid off the ledge because he didn't want to get jabbed, but thank God he's jabbed now, because we brainwashed him before he got jabbed, all the way back to the very first presentation about foreign exchange students and how that takes place, and what a great program that is, and we're all helping each other, and globalism, and blah, blah, blah. Every single presentation is instantly delegitimized when someone is honest. And it just highlights the stupidity of the people who are not. You couldn't have a clearer contrast than those 2 sections of that board meeting. It was amazing. Again, it's much like many board meetings. You can pick any board meeting, for example, that was loaded with parents who were yelling about the mask wearing back in the day. You can pick one across the nation. Any board meeting that started off with all these fluff presentations and fluff pieces, and then you just have parents screaming at them about mask wearing. It delegitimizes anything that the board thought that they were accomplishing right out of the gate. That's the difference, as I just said, that's the difference between lying to people and gaslighting them and telling the truth. It can't get any clearer. Now, I'm going to skip to the end here. The very end of the meeting is when Dawn King, wife of the second speaker there, calls for the immediate resignation of the superintendent. When you do such a thing, there's no way that it's being done casually. In fact, it's been proven that it's not being done casually because after this, she was approached by a local reporter who has an online newspaper. The regular old newspaper in our town doesn't exist anymore, and now it's all online and it's all free. She was approached by this individual, and this individual published what she told him. And what she told him is that her asking for the resignation of the superintendent has nothing to do with anything that her husband even brought up in the public comments section. And then she was asked by the reporter, what's the issue? And she said, it's confidential, I can't discuss it. When that happens, that means real serious shit's going on. Usually legal things, usually lawyers. That's usually what that means. Because they've been advised by legal counsel or a lawyer to not discuss said thing. She actually gave the superintendent an out. She gave the board an opportunity to do the right thing. And she told the reporter that the board knows exactly what this is about. So every single time, and I hope she does it, every single time that there's a board meeting from here on out, assuming the superintendent doesn't resign between now and 2 weeks from now, or another month from now, because he's already looking for work. I forgot to mention that when Scott was talking, because Scott brought it up. He's already looking for work. And the way that you find that out, if somebody is looking for work, is you FOIA it. You go to neighboring schools and neighboring workplaces and you ask them the simple question, I want the list of the people that you're attempting to hire for said position. And whether or not Ed Thoreau's name, our superintendent, this superintendent, is in that group of people. That's how you get that FOIA request. So he did that. And he found out that Ed Thoreau has applied for 2 other superintendent positions, and he didn't get either one of those jobs. Incredible. And I've seen the list because Scott published it online. And of course, what's interesting is he's a superintendent trying to give pay raises to administrators, along with the treasurer herself. The 2 of them are working together, clearly, because they're in each other's back pockets all the time. But they're working with one another to give pay raises to all of the building administrators, who already make more than most building administrators in our entire county, while he himself is looking for work somewhere else and applying other places. Now, I've brought this up on the show before. The reason that they do that and try to pay the administrators as much as they can is because it's the administrators themselves that are called in the hiring process. When a superintendent is going out for more work and looking for other work, they'll reach out to the building administrators and say, how did he work with you? Was he a good person? Was he this? Was he that? Well, if their wallets are full, what do you think they're going to say? They're going to write letters of recommendation for this nitwit. This is how this gets done. It's all to garner favor with building administrators so that the superintendent doesn't feel like they're on an island. What Ed doesn't understand is he's in a rowboat with holes in it. He's not on an island, and he's all by himself. and the treasurer is miles away in her own rowboat with holes in it, and she's all by herself too. And these two are going down. It is that simple. They will be license-less in months' time. Guaranteed. So they should quit. We'll see if that happens, and if it does, I will bring that to everyone's attention. Now, here's Dawn King with her closing statement asking for the resignation of the superintendent in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you. Are there any items from the board members?
I would like to make a motion to terminate the superintendent's contract for insubordination.
Motion, do we have a second? Motion fails for lack of a second.
When you're looking at this group of people when that was said, you can see all of their shorts just fill up with shit. I mean, it's amazing. And here's the best part, and this is really arguably one of the better parts with all of this. As I said before, you wouldn't do such a thing if you didn't have the goods. With that said, and all of that aside, whatever that issue may be, and I have no idea, but whatever it is, if Dawn King continues to do that, meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, and the board knows what she's talking about, and the public doesn't, that's like, again, playing the game Jenga, with all the blocks that are all stacked up. Dawn just pulled a giant block right out of the middle of that tower. Her husband knocked one out also. So did the other two guys speaking. Now what'll happen is the public will start pulling their own bricks, and then the whole thing falls to the ground. But with every single meeting, if Dawn King continues to make that motion and the board members refuse to vote, then they're implicated in whatever it is that's going on. And that's an admission of guilt, which means, again, they're the bricks that are getting knocked out of the tower. And then the tower falls, and the game is over. Now, you've heard me say on this show, and I want to reiterate this because this matters. I know this episode's getting longer. I think at the beginning I said this wasn't going to last very long. Look what happened. My apologies. I have no concept of time, apparently. What I've said in the past regarding being on a board and being on a school board is that the problems are endless. And I've also said clearly that if you don't have the majority on a board, then there's not a lot you can do. What Dawn's proving, and has proved, along with endless other individuals who have clearly contributed and or helped and or whatever, is that if you're a board member and you're surrounded by snakes, all you need is some outside assistance. And then you can accomplish a great deal as an individual on a board. You can engage in FOIA requests. Hell, the superintendent has made FOIAs against Dawn at least 2 or 3 times. So they're FOIA-ing each other on the board. Does that sound like an honest environment to anybody? Does it sound like everybody's doing the thing that they should all be doing? No. So you use FOIAs, and then you talk with parents, and you do what an elected official is supposed to do. When you do this, you're going to get more honesty that you can use against liars than what the liars can possibly handle and what the liars can possibly manage. So this, again, you've heard me say specifically that the fastest way to bring state attention to a school board and a school district and to collapse them is by walking away. Having all of the students leave, all the parents pull their students out, and then one magical day, no one's even there. Then everybody panics. Well, we don't understand why no one's coming. The buildings are open, but for some reason, no one's showing up. They would have absolutely no idea. In a perfect world, that would be the way that it would happen. And then everybody would do it across the world, and then schools would cease to exist. Because if you can read and write, you can teach yourself. And families would reorganize the way that they do things, and government would be out of the entire brainwashing institution, and 1 or 2 generations down the line, everybody would learn all the lies that we were taught in previous generations, and everybody would be hopefully teaching the truth to one another. Hopefully, in a perfect world. But since we don't live in a perfect world, this is how you take down a superintendent. This is how you take down a treasurer. This is how you take down board members. You keep giving them the opportunity to do the right thing with all of the information that they apparently know, and they continue to pass at the opportunity to do the right thing. How do these board members think this is going to work out for them? It won't. Whatever this is about, when this gets out, it's game over for all of them. They're all finished. They'll have to move. They'll have to sell their home and leave town. This is how it gets done. I love it. I'll keep everybody updated on it. My apologies for kind of the longer episode here. Again, it's not gossip. That's not what this is. We're talking about illegality. We're talking about crimes. We're talking about conspiracy. Hell, they're fraudulent. That's conspiracy to commit fraud. And they're reckless. And, one last thing, like I said earlier, what Don King said by making that motion, that's on the record now. Which means when you Google Ed Thoreau, what do you think is going to pop up? It's not just going to be the federal lawsuits that he's wrapped up in from that poor kid who was assaulted, along with everybody else on the board who was on the board when that happened, except for Don. But it's going to be this. And it's going to be that Oxford Free Press article that was written by that guy who lives in town, who runs that paper. Because now his name's in it. The superintendent and the treasurer are going to be waiting tables at a gay bar in 2 months. It'll be over. They're finished. Any updates that come with this, trust me, I'll bring them to you. Juicy stuff. Just understand, it's not gossip. It's illegality. It's unprofessionalism. It's corruption. That's what this is. And they got caught. And people write down when they sneeze. Hell, I comment every single time they cough. This happens. People are observant, and people have skills. And if they think that people watching them and listening to them and putting up with all their bullshit can't play the game better than they play it, or play it as dirty as they play it, they got another thing coming. Because what's happening here is not dirty on the good guys' part. They're actually doing it by the book, and that's how you bring these people down. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. As always, I'll end it there. I'll catch you on Wednesday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.